Hey, what's up guys? My name is Brenton. I am over here at the park and we are going to be pitting this guy against the Canon C300s, the Epic W. And I'm going to do some setup and Connor over here is going to film me. I'll tag Connor on Instagram because he's super cool. And we got our awesome model over here, Angel. Say hi, Angel. Thank you for coming here. Okay, I'm going to get set up. So we're going to be filming with the 70 to 200s today. Because I have two matching ones at my disposal. And I've got some NDs and a matte box for the red, and then I'm just using the built-in ND filters on the C300. There we go. I've got this guy preloaded with a 5-stop and a 1-stop ND filter. Okay, now I'm gonna set up the Canon, which is like 10 times easier to set up. Okay, so this bad boy is the C300 Mark III. It is significantly lighter than the Epic W. And the setup time is, I don't know, I feel like it's cut in half. I just like put on the top handle and the battery. And then the lens, and it's like pretty much ready to go, minus like the monitor cable. And all the ND filters are built in, so I have that advantage too, which is pretty great. So the red camera takes about a minute to fully kick on, and then the Canon is like about 4 seconds and it's on. So today I'm going to be setting both of them to 5600 Kelvin. We're going to be shooting at ISO 800 for both the cameras, since those are both the native ISOs for those cameras. It's interesting, it doesn't look like I have enough ND for the red. Okay, so the red camera, because it doesn't have any built-in ND filters, it's pretty common to use a matte box or a variable ND filter. So I've got these 4x5 filters. Have I cut enough light? I have a 0.3, a 0.6, and like a 1.5. I swear that's like 9 stops of ND. It looks like we have enough. Ah, too many filters. My color and my contrast out of the image. It's really interesting the way it looks. It's very green. Once you start stacking NDs, you can reduce your contrast by too much. So it's important to have stronger NDs. That way you don't have to stack as many ND filters. So one thing that's really important to remember when you're shooting on the red cameras is that you have to calibrate the sensor for a given temperature ahead of time. So I have it set for the default, I believe, of 39 Celsius. So I'm actually still waiting for it to heat up. I think I'm only at about 35. It says I can actually start shooting now because I'm within the range of temperatures where you're not going to get any strange fixed pattern noise, which is what the black shade calibrate is trying to reduce, is all your fixed pattern noise. So the matte box seems to be giving a green cast to the entire image. That's pretty normal with ND filters to get a slight green cast, but once you start stacking ND filters, you kind of increase the potential for infrared pollution. So that looks like that's what's happening. So I'm actually going to run this guy with no ND filters as well, and just stop down to pretty much all the way down f32. I'm still going to be at about 200 millimeters though, so I'll still have some depth of field. There's like a dog in the background on one, and the dog is not there on the other. Okay, so sensor's all warmed up. So I'm gonna start rolling on both cameras. The red camera's recording in 8K at 12:1 compression, while the Canon is recording in the Cinema Raw Lite format. So that's about a 3:1 compression according to Canon. Okay, so second test I'm doing is the non-RAW codecs. So this guy, I'm actually going to be shooting DNX HD or DNX HR on here in 4K, and I'm going to be shooting the XF AVC codec on here. DNX HR is actually 12-bit on this guy for the higher codec, and this is only going to be 10-bit. So we're going to kind of see how those two compare in post later. Okay, So we're gonna go off the tripod and we're gonna do our walking tracking shot now. The Red camera actually has to crop in quite a lot for its slow motion capabilities, and the Canon can use the full Super 35 sensor. So you're gonna notice the Red will be a little bit shakier. I'm gonna try to compensate that a little bit. They're both gonna be recording at 60 frames a second and then slowed down in camera to 24. So we're gonna have you starting and walking towards the tripods, and I'm gonna be following you walking backwards. Camera rolling, and start walking towards me. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with the Canon. Okay, so with this guy, I actually have the advantage of using the autofocus on here, so I'm gonna take advantage of that to track his face. And I actually have the ND filters on as well, so I've got a full 6 stops of ND. So I'm at about f6.3 for this test, as opposed to the Red where I had to be at about f22. The point of this test that's coming up, we're going to be just in the back seat getting kind of an interior of the car with the window in the background, just kind of test the perceived sharpness we can get in an image, whether it's 8K or 4K, and if it really matters in a lot of scenarios where there's a lot of kind of shakiness. Okay, here we go. Okay, in post note here, I noticed the Red is still sharper than the Canon with these tracking and shaking kind of shots on the car, and at 24 frames a second it seems like there's still a noticeable difference. Okay, so I'm setting up a softbox as my key light, and I don't typically light this flat, but I'm gonna kind of try to do a split face and just blast them with light with just basic diffusion on here. I've taken out the inner diffusion. I typically keep that in there for kind of a softer, more pretty light. But for this, I'm really doing overexposure and underexposure. So I want as much output as possible for the overexposure part. I think I have enough overexposure range now. So here's our base exposure. I'm at f11, and I'm gonna be opening up the aperture and closing down the aperture to do overexposure and underexposure. Okay, so now I'm going over to the compressed record format. I'm gonna do DNX HR. I'm gonna get some 12-bit 4K footage, and I'm gonna see how far I can push that back and forth in comparison to the 16-bit RAW. Okay, so recording in RAW over here at ISO 800 at f11 for our base exposure. And I'm gonna go through all the overexposure and underexposure. Hey, thanks so much for watching. This has been the C300 versus the Red Epic W camera comparison test. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see some more content like this with Connor behind the camera and Angel in front of the camera. Love your support and your comments below, and have an awesome day.